their man's greatest thrill.
They tried and failed.
They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Do you want me to just kind of jump straight into it?
Yeah, so we start with Empty Country, yeah?
Yep, absolutely, man. So this was released on the 20th of March 2020. The album consists of 10 songs and approximately 46 minutes long. As far as I'm aware, it's the band's debut studio album, follows the release of their first EP, Ultrasound, which came out almost a year ago on the 7th of August 2019, which coincidentally was not long after we recorded the very first Scratchcast podcast. Sitting in your very own kitchen, Snedds. In fact, I think I remember kind of playing the EP, or at least kind of recommending it to you.
Oh, really?
Not long after we finished recording, yeah, because there's two songs on the album. There's two songs on the EP. There's Ultrasound, which is on this album, and Jets, which unfortunately doesn't feature on the album. But it was kind of Jets that I was kind of most enamoured with. It's just this kind of beautifully melancholic and atmospheric wee 3-minute number. And since then, I've kind of kept my ear pretty close to the ground for any kind of new material of theirs. I couldn't really find all that much information online about the band. They do have a website, which is just empty country, all one word, .bandcamp.com. It says that they're based in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and describe themselves and or him or herself as a very serious artist. Upon further digging, however, I kind of stumbled upon an article on tinyengines.net. Again, all one word. Tiny Engines are an independent record label from the Carolinas. I couldn't tell you where the Carolinas are. I imagine it's got something to do with North and South Carolina. In the US, they describe themselves as an evolution of ideas and gathering of like-minded people who dig inspiring music, a tight-knit community of friends and strong independent DIY ethics. Interestingly, Empty Country were initially signed up to the Tiny Engines record label, but there seems to have been a bit of a disagreement between the two parties, following another artist by the name of Adult Mom, spelled M-O-M, falling out with the record label over payment schedules and what have you. So the article's still there. You can read it for yourself. It kind of goes into a bit of the kind of background of the artist and how he kind of pulled this album together. It's on tinyengines.net/band/empty country. But it turns out it's just one guy.
Yeah, well, what I found an article about the band, and it's a project formed out of the ashes of a New Jersey band called Cymbals Eat Guitars.
Yeah.
And they broke up in 2017. It's not a band I'm familiar with, so I can't really comment on their sound or their appeal particularly. I didn't really go back and listen to anything to check them out.
An interesting wee side note to Cymbals Eat Guitars. Apparently they got this name after Lou Reed was asked to describe what Velvet Underground sounded like. So they must have got it from some old interview of his.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool. But yeah, according to this article, like I said, the one on Tiny Engines, the guy's name's Joseph De Agostino. And it's his first full-length solo album following his departure from the old band. He apparently wrote, arranged and produced the whole thing himself. It took him 2 years. The interesting thing about this album is that he specifically included a lot of his kind of close family and friends. Yep. And got them to sing certain lyrics and perform kind of various different instruments for him. And I suppose that kind of explains why I thought it was maybe a kind of fuller band, as it were, rather than just a kind of solo artist.
Aye, it's certainly more. It's performed as a full band. As just a singer songwriter, and he's got the drummer is the ex Cymbals Eat Guitars drummer.
Is it right? I never realised that.
She's got her twin brother in to play bass, and then it's D'Agostino, his wife, who is in a band herself called Field Mouse. Never heard
All
of
right.
them. But she's in a band in her own right. So his wife and her sister do the sort of backing vocals.
Cool. I really enjoyed this album. I thought it was great. I'm just gonna smooze all over it. I'm just gonna go for it, man. I've described it as being kind of equal parts melancholic and uplifting. I kind of believe that there's kind of genuine, beautiful kind of synergy at work here, and it kind of complements each other really well. The first track in particular, Marianne, I think that's how you pronounce it. I think it was the first one of the two singles that have been released from the album. I've described it as kind of opening with this almost hypnagogic and ethereal musical arrangement that I don't think's all that too dissimilar from the type of thing that you might have heard the likes of Sigur Rós do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In fact, I've kind of likened it to the opening moments of, again, I'm going to mispronounce this, man, Sven de Engler, the Sigur Rós song.
Yeah. Stefan Gengler.
Yeah. Something like that. And I think it's just something to do with the kind of muted and distant oohs and ahs that you hear, coupled with that kind of electronic fuzz and reverb that you get round about the kind of 35-second mark before it kind of cuts in with this kind of really clean and clear, almost kind of jangly guitar sounds. D'Agostino's vocals come in not long after that, and I've described them as having a real kind of fragility to them. That I think works really well. And I think the female backing vocals, which is probably from one of the guys that you've kind of just mentioned there previously, Snedds, really elevates it and kind of brings it up to another level, especially during the chorus, as it were, which I found really quite affecting, if I'm honest. I found it quite moving somehow. I've got no idea what they're singing about. Absolutely no idea. But it sounds almost like I think it's a story about somebody dying in a mine shaft, possibly, or knowing somebody that dies in a mine shaft.
Not sure. I didn't really dive all that deeply into the lyrics, but I imagine you could get quite heavily into them. But regardless of whether you know what they're singing about or not, there's clear like emotion throughout all of these songs. And sticking with Marion for a moment, it's a song. Reminds me a lot of a band that I haven't listened to in a long time. They're a band called Delays, and their debut album, Faded Seaside Glamour, was one of my favorite albums when I was in my sort of late teens, and that album especially has got a similar kind of style of kind of quiet and tender songs, like full of emotion and just kind of quite beautiful songs. So these really melodic verses and choruses. So I like this song a lot, partly because it reminds me of that album and that band particularly.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right, though, and I've kind of pointed that out as well, that there is, there's elements like that peppered throughout the course of the album. There's a lot of kind of tone, expression, and kind of emotional moments. The only thing that I will say is I did think that there was a bit of a lull or a kind of dip in quality round about kind of track number 5 with Chance. I didn't really enjoy that too much, to be honest. And I think that's maybe just because it was different. Like, I think it's just because it's different. It doesn't... I felt, for me, it kind of felt a wee bit out of place, but I don't know. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure. It's funny you should say that, because Chance is one of my favourite songs. And part of the reason for that is it sounds very much like a Ton song. If you remember, Ton were on my...
top 20.
My top 20 albums of all time. And it's that kind of... it's those vocal harmonies, the sort of male and female vocal harmonies that Ton do so well. That's like all over this song, and it's just a really tender, emotionally charged song. And and it's got a sort of, the main melody is almost like a lullaby. It's like,
I'll get that, man. Yeah,
it's like one of those mobiles you get, above a baby's crib, and it's got that little tune on it. It's almost like that. And but there's also a kind of haunting. There's a haunting tune that reminds me a lot of the song "Head Over Heels" by Tears for Fears, which is the only reason I know that song is because it's one of the main themes from the film Donnie Darko, and it's like this really heartbreaking melody that features throughout the film, and there's just a little hint of that in this song, and I think it's the combination of that and the fact that it sounds like a tongue song that I think it's a great track.
Kind of clinched it for you. Yeah. I mean, I've kind of described it as being a bit of a kind of dreamy number. Kind of agreeing with what you were just saying there as well, man. It just wasn't for me. But there's a lot of other songs on this album that kind of more and make up for that. Ultrasound really stands out. Like I said, that was on the EP of the same name. Becca, Swim was really good as well. I've described it as being quite an ambitious album. I think it succeeds in kind of fusing elements of what I've described as kind of traditional folk and kind of country music, but at the same time there's a wee bit of indie rock thrown in there, even some kind of proggy stuff. And as you already said, he was already an accomplished artist before he, set out to make this recording, but the fact that he kind of wrote it, arranged it, and pretty much produced the whole thing himself, albeit with help, I think is a kind of massive achievement. And it's a great body of work. Yeah,
it's a really impressive album. I mean, mentioned Marion and Chance. I like those songs a lot, but there's like we were saying, there's a sort of tenderness and emotion to it, but it also doesn't. It has really loud and aggressive moments as well. I mean, Ultrasound is quite a rocky.
Yeah.
It's got a more aggressive kind of emo sound. There's fuzzed up guitars. There's a sort of radio static quality about the vocals. There's a little bit of a Brand New or Taking Back Sunday vibe to that on their sort of later albums, kind of beyond their sort of punk rock days. But I think a lot of what I like about this album is there's so many sounds from bands that I'm into. I mean, there's obviously the sort of Sigur Rós-esque intro on Marion.
Yeah.
I talked about delays on that track as well. On Diamond, the second track, that reminds me of a Fleet Foxes song. Like I said, there's sounds of Brand New, Taking Back Sunday on Ultrasound. Untitled, I think, has got the sort of juxtaposition of the angerness and the anger and the sort of sorrow, and that reminds me somewhat of the Microwave album we covered.
All right, yeah.
There's vibes of that on there. I've talked about Tongue on Chance, and there's just stuff I like all over this album. I've even sort of dug out a bit of The Cure on the song Southern Cloud, which the kind of opening guitar chords and tones to that sound a lot like the song Lullaby, but it kind of goes into a much more upbeat, non-Cure sort of chorus. But I like that sort of initial, this sounds like The Cure, it's going to be depressing as fuck, but then it's actually really upbeat, and so I just like that kind of contrast. But I think the album Closer Swim, I mean, I've got mixed feelings about that song because I think I don't like country slide guitar, and
right.
It's got country slide guitar on it.
Yeah,
there's just something about that guitar tone that I just can't stand it. And
do you think it cheapens a song? Do you feel as if it's kind of like gimmicky? Is that your problem with it, or?
I don't know. It's just a style of music I don't particularly like. So when I hear it on songs,
it's just immediately
puts me off. I don't know if it necessarily cheapens it. It's just a thing I don't like.
Yeah.
So it kind of annoys me. But the thing about that song is it's also a really fitting end to the album because it's such a sort of emotionally charged album that it hits the sort of 3.5 minute mark and then it just explodes into this huge, like, cacophonous ball of energy, and it builds to sort of a breaking point, and then that sort of crumbles away to sort of calm again for the last like minute or 30 seconds or whatever it is, and that just seems to kind of perfectly put a sort of a point, describe that sort of sequence describes the album of a whole and how the sort of energy shifts on all of these songs. So I like the song for that reason, but the slide guitar has to go. It's just, but other than that, I think it's a really strong album. There's the odd dip here and there of less interesting kind of moments and stuff, but overall, a really strong album.
What rating did you give it, Snedds?
I've said an 8 or a 9, and I think it's a strong 8 if it's an 8.
That's exactly how I've said. For me, it's a strong 8, possibly 9 out of 10 is what I've written here in front of me. Yeah, I would agree with that, man. I'm tempted to give it a 9, actually, to be honest.
I think it's one of these ones that the more you listen to it, the more it's going to get its claws into you because there's so many layers to it, and then I think you've taken it on face value without even sort of diving into the lyrical content and stuff. Once you start doing that, it's just gonna have even more kind of depth to it. So I can see this one being a grower definitely. So yeah, it could creep up.
Definitely.
Yeah, great album. So that was Empty Country by Empty Country, self-titled album.
What do you call that again? Eponymous.
What?
Is that what you call it? One of those albums? Eponymous?
Eponymous debut. What's eponymous mean again? Does that
not just mean by the same name or something?
Yeah, it does. Eponymous just means the thing that's in the name. So, like, Cheers, the bar Cheers is like the eponymous bar in the name of the TV show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A shit way of describing it. But.
Yeah, but so this is their eponymous debut album.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Fancy way of saying self-titled.
Yeah, totally.
It's not finished. It's finished.